Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Rave Social Podcast. I'm your host, Jaiden, and today we have Madi Brown, who is a content creator and content strategist. She's also a good friend of mine, and we're really excited to have her on the podcast today to talk about why content creation and content strategy is so important for your business. It just gets more important every single day. So, Madi, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do, who you serve, and then we'll jump in.
I do content creation and brand photography for different types of brands. It's usually lifestyle or e-commerce brands, but I've been doing this since COVID hit, so back in 2020.
You've worked with some crazy big brands over the past few years, and you've really just taken off as a brand photographer and even just your content strategy and things that you post on Instagram. Very valuable person to have in your corner. Like if you're not following Madi, you really should. She shares a lot of good info for free on Instagram.
Okay, I love that you say that because I'm like, I want to make sure the content I share is not just generic things that everyone knows, where it's like, hey, we all know this already. Like, I want it to be helpful.
It's everywhere on Instagram. I feel like it's kind of hard to actually find accounts that like really do actually provide a new perspective or different value because a lot of people are just saying the same thing over again, and that's okay. But I mean, if you really want to be good at it, like if you really want to be good at running your own social media, you have to follow people who change your mind and bring new ideas to you. So on that note, what are some things that people do when they are creating content for their brand, whether it be their brand photos or just like content for the brand? What should they be doing? What should they be paying attention to?
A lot of people obviously pay attention to the aesthetics. The aesthetics is a huge part of it for sure. Like,
Yeah.
I think that people forget that aesthetics in itself has strategy. But then there's also the strategy part. So, like, there's actually creating the content for your brand, but then it's like, what are the objectives? What is the actual messaging? Because if you are just focusing on aesthetics and not the messaging, then it just doesn't do anything. And then vice versa,
Yeah.
if you're just paying attention to messaging but not the visuals, it doesn't do much. Like, it's not very engaging. So you want to do both to have actual engaging content. And I feel like a lot of brands struggle with that. They don't know how to marry the two together. And although they're very simple, like, people overcomplicate it. So it's just figuring out what you want people to think of when they think of your brand, what you want your brand to portray online, and then just go from there. Because people can overcomplicate it, and then it's just like, it's all very simple.
Exactly. Like it's simple, but it takes like some real thought as to what you want to come across as. And it's so like exactly what you said, like both visuals and the like copy or messaging is so important because if you have really strong messaging but you don't have a good visual representation of that, like you just look low budget is what ends up happening. Like you end up looking like a DIY brand, you end up looking like not a professional, not an authority, like people don't trust you because you don't look like what you're
Yeah.
saying you do, and what you say you do is probably true, but if they're not seeing that like in the video content, in the photo content, like the disconnect will for sure be there.
I feel like two people will have really good products, that they'll have a really good mission or whatever, but then they don't have content that matches it. And so it's like a bummer to see sometimes because, yeah, like people do have a lot to give, but then they don't know how to effectively showcase that. So it's just like there's a disconnect for sure.
Yeah, and it's so subconscious on the side of your audience. Like they're not looking at your feed and going, "Oh, they look DIY or something." But it's the subconscious feeling that they get when they look at your feed and they are like, like I don't know if this is even like a real brand, or like they just have these underlying thoughts that you can fix so easily by having like a good visual identity around it.
I feel like having a good visuals also, like you said, helps with trust. Because, yeah, like people will be like, is this an actual brand? Or like, once you take your visuals and your content seriously, other people will take your brand seriously. And that's obviously why I do what I do, because there's so many people that have such amazing brands, but they just need help to like like portray that online. But then also
Yeah.
it's like I get it because a lot of business owners, they don't have the space, like they truly don't have the mental capacity to even go into that. But then it's like ironic because that's like what will transform their brand, but then a lot of people also put their marketing on the back burner. I've
Yeah,
noticed.
it is. It's so interesting. I think business owners are just spread so thin that they don't know what to focus on that makes an impact. And then you add the noise of social media to that and they're just like, wait, so like should I be focusing on Instagram or my email list or like paid ads or like content? Like what is it that I actually need? So that's actually a really good question for you. What would you say is an indicator that like they really need to prioritize their content creation over maybe some of these other things that they could be paying attention to?
Yeah, I mean, I always tell brands, especially when they have a tight budget, to just start with like one thing, like focus on one thing and then go from there. There's brands that will be like, hey, I need to post on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. I need to do ads. I need to do my newsletter. I like need to do community events, whatever. And it's like, it definitely can be a lot. So I just tell people to focus on the one thing, and a good way to figure out like how to determine which platform to decide on, or like if you should do your newsletter first, whatever, is just figure out where your ideal audience is going to be and then going from there. So and most people, that is Instagram. Obviously
Yeah.
newsletters are really important, but that can be really easy to implement once you get an audience built like on a platform, and usually that is Instagram for people. Like Instagram, although can be quote unquote oversaturated, there's still like the online space is huge. There's still a corner for everyone. So that's usually where people start is Instagram. And that's also like the least foreign to people,
Yeah.
compared to like dabbling into TikTok, which I feel like they both have very different strategies. And then, there's Pinterest and then Facebook, which Facebook I don't feel like is really that
Yeah.
relevant for most unless you're doing ads or something. But yeah, I just tell people to start with one place first and then go from there, because if you're just going to go from 0 to 100, it's never going to be sustainable and people are just going to burn out.
I did love what you said about you got to choose one platform, and once you've built an audience somewhere, it really is so much easier to grow these other things out or outsource them at some point, right? Because like you're right, at the beginning you're not going to have all the funds to just invest in a email copywriter, a social media manager, content, like you're not going to have that. So focusing on one is really important. Do you feel like there are indicators that you've seen in a business where it's like, okay, they have like their messaging down pretty good and they have like this and that, but it really is their like visual brand that is lacking? Like, what are some indicators of that? Like, are they not converting people or are people not sticking around? What is that?
Yeah, I mean, as far as conversions, it's hard to tell because it could be messaging or it could be visuals. I feel like right off the bat, if I were to go onto like a page, an Instagram page, and the visuals aren't consistent, I'm gonna be like, what's going on? But also, like if it goes back to the basics, where if they're not posting consistently, whatever that looks like for them, consistency is different for everyone. Or yeah, they have low engagement, like that could be a messaging problem. Because sometimes, I mean, I feel like you talk about this a lot too. It's like sometimes people focus too much on the aesthetics, but then it's like they're losing the messaging again.
Yeah.
But it's like obviously both can mean different things. But as far as the inconsistency in visuals, and I feel like people also don't know what they're saying sometimes. Like
Yeah.
they kind of just look at everyone else and they're like, okay, we're going to use this type of copy, or we're going to film this type of video. But then they're like, they don't know what the end goal is. Like, they don't know what they want to do with the content. They just are trying to push out content, which I don't blame people for doing, but
Yeah.
it can kind of backfire.
Sometimes that's the place where like you start in a place where you're like, I just need to get content out. And then you get to a point, maybe 2 months down the road, where you're like, okay, I'm putting this content out. Well, it's not working the way I wanted it to. So that's at the point at which I think people then realize, oh, I need a strategy. Or they want to give up. And that's when I'm like, well, don't give up. You just need to tweak some things.
Yeah.
But yeah,
And it can
I
be
agree
very
with what you're
simple.
saying. Yeah, it can be very simple. And I agree with what you're saying with like the visual part of a brand. Like if you go to someone's Instagram and there is no consistency in like look and feel, and I'm saying like colors, are your photos moody? Are they light and airy? Are they mostly product photos? Like what is the vibe? If it is inconsistent, I agree. It gives you that feeling of like, is this even real? Like you don't look elevated, you don't look put together, and therefore people don't trust you. Like that's kind of where that
Yeah.
goes. But at the same time, like if I think you have a problem with like being too aesthetic if you will not post
Mm-hmm.
because maybe the pictures don't look perfect next to each other. Like that
Yeah.
to me is where I'm like, okay, that's a red flag. Like posting is still going to be more important than those two pictures looking perfect next to each other. Because it like
Yeah.
in the world where you don't post, nobody's going to see you. And that is the ultimate
Right.
goal. But again, you do need to balance the way you look so that you're perceived correctly.
Well, and like people, yeah, I feel like people will. It's like a fine line. And obviously, a lot of it is mindset and just having the confidence in what you're offering people. But like people will also focus too much on the minor details and then forget the big picture. And it's like, yes, details matter. I talk about all the time. But I feel like, too, depending on where you are in your business, it is better to just get content out. But like, I don't know, people are just trying their best,
Yeah,
like,
for sure, for sure.
but you
People are
definitely
trying
want to
their
have a
best.
plan. Like, you want to have a plan where, like,
Totally.
okay, we're in this stage right now where it's like, I know my content isn't perfect, but I'm just going to put it out there, see what bites. And then from there, once you can see like what is converting, what isn't, or maybe nothing's converting, that's when you need to maybe get some outside perspective or outsource something, whatever it may be. Like, you can't do it all alone either.
No, I mean, it's just so much. Like,
It's a lot.
this is a side tangent, but like, it's why the social media management industry has changed so much, I would say, over the last year, because everything is a specialty. Like, photo and video, both specialties. Like, content strategy is a specialty. There's graphic design. There is people who like schedule, people who write captions. Like it's all so like niched out now, which is a good thing and a bad thing, I think. But it's because like it is like literally too much for just one person to be doing all of that. So and if you're in the space where you're like, well, I can't afford it, I have to do it on my own, that's okay because there will be a point in time in which you can't hire somebody out, even if that's not right now. But my next question for you is there anything that people are doing that like doesn't matter? Like I know we touched on the grid aesthetic a little bit and that, but like are there things people are doing either with their content or with they're focusing way too much on like X and Y when they're taking photos and they don't need to?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably like what I said earlier, where they're just perfectionism gets them. Like they're overcomplicating things. They're too worried on the minor details. And I think a lot of that just has to do with confidence and then creating that structure within your content creation process, because a lot of people also kind of just whip things up, but then it doesn't translate. And I think that maybe people can have a little bit more of a plan. Like, I don't know. I don't think people plan enough, but then there's some people
Yeah.
that just like whip things up. Anyway, so that's what I would say is probably just like the minor details that don't matter as much as people think they do. Where it's like, I feel like a lot of people too, they won't post or like they'll like hide posts or whatever because they think that their audience is paying attention to things that they're really stressed about, but they aren't. Like if there's someone that is in front of the camera talking about something and they haven't like gotten fully ready or whatever, like I mean, I think it's
Yeah.
important to be present your brand how you want it to be presented, but people
Yeah.
aren't thinking about that minor detail as much as you are. Or like if you're filming a video of your product in a scene or something and there's like a speck of dust on it or something. And
Yeah.
I pay attention to that because that's like my job. But
Yeah.
for someone else that's doing it, like people are not going to be thinking about stuff like that, like you are. I know I'm trying to think of other examples, but it's like those tiny details that's what really gets people hung up. Where they're like, I'm just not
Yeah.
gonna like. You literally just need to get in the habit. You need to get the confidence. You just need to like remember like why you're doing it all.
Exactly what you're saying. People get caught up on minor details. Like some things that I've had clients of mine be worried about that I sometimes giggle, not at them, but I'm just like, oh, I would never worry about that. It's like sometimes they will be overly concerned about like the audio that they're using on a reel. And there's a couple
Yeah.
reasons why that doesn't really like, okay, you're not going to want to use like a screamo audio if you're like a luxury wedding photographer. That is obvious. But pretty much every trending audio is going to be fine for you for a few reasons. One, nobody's ever going to freaking remember it. They're not going to
Yeah.
remember. And the other thing is that like it is a trending audio. So even if it's not perfectly aligned with your brand, like maybe you're very romantic or whatever, and it's more of like a dance beat that is trending, it's okay. People know that it's a trending audio. They are smarter than you think that they are. And it's like don't let that like trip you up.
And it's not that serious either. It's like it's okay to try new things. Like it doesn't all
Yeah.
have to be this strict type of like
Yeah.
content strategy. Like there's still room to try new things. And I feel like too what I've noticed when I've delivered content or photos to clients is the content that I created that I thought was like it was based on literally just my creative experimentation. I was
Yeah.
like, they probably aren't gonna like it, but I'm just gonna throw it in there as extra content. That's usually their favorite. And I feel like that happens too on social media, like the content that I make even for myself that I'm like, I don't know, like if this will hit, but we'll see. It usually does because people
Yeah.
like that's why I
I
always feel
mean,
like it's really important to experiment.
yes, I think people, okay, the word strategy I think is very, I honestly don't think people even know what that means.
No,
And it's
yeah, it's
because
a
like
fluff
it's
word.
because it is like really vague. Like it's just a fluffy word to use. And I will say this, like part of my strategy for myself and pretty much all of my clients is to try new things. That's like something that we're actively doing is being like, I'm going to try this style of video. I'm going to try this trend. I'm going to try these things that I normally wouldn't, that maybe don't align perfectly with my conversion strategy, like how I'm selling to people. But it's still part of my overall plan for my brand and for my account is that I want to try new things. I want to test new ideas and see how they land with my audience. And like, I think going back to the word strategic, like people overcomplicate that word because I really don't even know why, but they overcomplicate it to this fact where it's like, okay, my strategy is like how many times a week I post, what time I post, what my content pillars are, which like I don't even believe in content pillars. Like I don't write
No, they're
content pillars for
outdated.
my clients. Like I oh, that's not strategic. What is strategic is what is your message? How are you going to reach people? How are you going to nurture them? How are you going to convert them? Like that is strategic, not what audio you're using and what time you're
Yeah.
posting, which
That's
is
a good example
confusing.
too of what people get caught up on that doesn't matter. Like that's so true too because
Yeah.
people be like, "Oh no, it's 6 p.m. Like I can't post
Yeah.
today." And I'm like, "Just see what happens. Just post
Like
it. Like
just
we'll
do
just see
it.
what
Like
happens." Yeah. And then like the
yeah.
shelf life of content is so long anyway, especially on Instagram. Like it could probably flop within the first hour, but then if it's a good piece of content, it actually could turn
We'll
around in
take off
the next
later.
day. Yeah.
I keep noticing that too. I feel like that's becoming more and more like of a thing with the algorithm on Instagram is that like I've actually seen a lot of my content have slow traction for like literally a day.
Hmm.
And then the next day it will like perform how like I would have expected it to, which is
Yeah,
just
and
so
then you're like,
weird. And
oh, okay, I know what I'm doing.
yeah, I'm like, oh, okay, like it's all good. But also like
Yeah,
I don't know. I put out so much content for myself and my clients that like I literally do not have a single brain cell that is available to go look at the views on stuff.
thing.
Yeah. I'm like, if we have a problem, I'm going to address it, but like it's literally fine. I think you will go crazy if you care about each individual piece of content. That's just like too much
Well,
to
this
care
doesn't make
about.
anything fun. It makes content creation not fun. And that's something too where I try to remind people is like creating stuff is actually fun, guys. Like you're getting too caught up on the numbers. Like obviously the numbers are important for sure. You want to pay attention to what's actually working. But I feel like there's also, as you know, different types of content that will do different types of things. Like there's like the content that is made to reach people, and then there's
Yeah.
content that's made to nurture your people or whatever. And I feel like too, people get caught up on one or the other.
It's kind of making me laugh because now I'm realizing that people like if they have good reach content, they like will complain that rightfully so that they're not converting anyone. And then when people have like good sales content, they'll kind of like feel bad that they're not reaching people. But it's like those are like literally two opposite things. And like, yes, sometimes they will have an overlap. And it's usually a reel that you see on your For You page that is connected to a many chat that makes you believe that all of your
Yeah.
content should be high reach and high converting. But that's why that is on your For You page because it's an anomaly. It's outperforming everything else. Like, that's not normal. That's not like what you should use as your benchmark. And instead, focusing on like for my clients, a lot of them follow launches. And so it's like, okay, well, 6 weeks before the launch, we're going to focus on reach content. 4 to 5 weeks before the launch, we're going to start nurturing a little bit more. Then 2 to 3 weeks, we're going to start converting, getting people to the email list, whatever. And we know that in weeks 2 to 3, we're not going to be reaching a lot of people. We're going to be
Yeah.
nurturing people that are already there. And when you start to understand these concepts, I feel like you enjoy social media more because you're not expecting every piece of content to be everything.
Every
That
piece matters for the entire goal.
yeah, it's all moving together. It's like what they say about relationships. Like they can't be everything to you. And it's like, yes, your one reel can't be everything to you. It can't be your reach, nurture, conversion, everything. It's not going to be your whole funnel. It's just going to be part of it.
I have noticed when posting content for myself too, like there'll be a piece of content I'll put out that gets like not as many likes, whatever, but then I get people in my DMs, like or like in my on my website, whatever. Like sometimes the numbers won't show up on that on social media, but they'll show up in other areas, and that's like obviously different ways of converting people. I feel like it's just important to remember for people creating content online that you you don't want to just stay stuck in the same thing for too long because then you'll hit a plateau. But you also don't want to be just like changing things up every week because then you can't measure
Yeah.
that to anything and then people are like, what's going on? So again, it's like having that balance. And I know people sometimes will have a hard time trying something new because I get it, like their brand is their baby. They everything needs to be perfect, right? But you kind of have to let that go, especially with social media a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, every big brand that you've ever seen has all the major brands, like Apple. That I know we always use that one, but literally like Apple, Facebook, all these huge companies, like they only got where they are because they were not afraid to take a risk. They were not afraid of being told no. They were not afraid of doing something that they've never done before. They just do it. They just do it. And like,
Yeah.
yeah, there's some things that have like totally flopped, even with Apple, even still.
Yeah,
But
they
it's
just keep
okay. Like,
going.
you just keep going. And I think that's so important, which actually kind of segues me into another question I had for you, which was like, what are some of your favorite or your best like investments as a content creator, either for like improving the quality or level of your content or just like helping you as a creator?
Yeah, you know what? I think my favorite so far has been investing in coaching. Like, I think
Yeah.
people, when they're like, wait, you do coaching for content, but then that's like your profession. I'm like, well, yeah, because I want to make sure I'm also trying new things. I'm also getting new perspectives from other people, and I'm continuing to learn new things because the things I knew like a year ago, I actually disagree with now. I
Same.
feel like yeah, I feel like it's important to just keep changing. And obviously, that's what social media is too. Is just it's ever changing, and that's what I also noticed with other people that they're like maybe they did really well with their content a year ago, but now they're just like at a plateau, and it's because they're not changing with social media. And I think another thing too that investing in my own coaching is that it's helped me become a better listener for my own content and my own community. I think that's something that people forget is like they're pumping out content, but then they're not listening to people. Like they're not looking at the comments or the stories that people will slide up on or what people are saying in their reviews, whatever. They're just worried about like the vanity things, like likes or whatever, but they're not listening to what people are saying. And that's something that has helped me personally with investing in
Yeah.
an outside perspective.
Yeah.
I think that's my favorite thing. And then like I mean, something that's obvious is obviously just investing in fun equipment because
Yeah.
you have to. If you, I mean, you don't have to, but I love it. So,
Yeah. I mean, I love it too. And I would spend all my money if I didn't have self control on just like
same.
expensive camera gear that I will use twice a year. Like I'm just addicted to it. I love it so much. But
You buy it and you're like, yeah, I'm going to do all this stuff. And then
yeah.
you
Like
don't.
I have my Sony that I just got, which is it's like the same as like the G7X, but it's like the Sony version. And I love it. And I was like, I'm totally gonna vlog. And then I was like, who do I think I am? Like,
Oh my
I'm not
gosh, I
gonna
remember you
vlog.
saying that on your
Like,
story.
I am not gonna vlog. I would love to vlog. Can't do it. Can't do it. I don't know what's
You're
wrong with
like,
me. Can't do
wait.
it. But I
I
agree with
think
you
that
too
takes
on,
habits too.
oh, I think it does. And like, I don't know. I just like I'm such like a disconnector. Like I need white space. I need like time away from my phone. Like
uh,
I don't like to scroll all the time. Like I have boundaries there for a reason. And I feel like if I was vlogging, I would not be able to live in the moment, which
no,
is probably
yeah, it
wrong.
takes it
That's probably
away.
not true, but it's how I feel.
No, it's valid.
Back to the coaching, I agree 100%. And it brought up a thought for me where I was like, okay, so the people that you trust to teach you are always learning. Like I've worked for CEOs before who constantly they're learning, they're coaching themselves and then they're coaching us on new sales strategies, on whatever. That's how it goes in a business. And I think for some reason when we are the business owner and we're these small businesses, we feel like if we don't agree with and like stick to our guns on what we thought a year ago was true, sometimes it feels like we've lost credibility with ourselves, but that's not true. It's like very normal to year after year change what you believe and change what you think works. And especially in this world, especially with social media, because it is always changing. So I would say if you do hold the same beliefs that you had a year ago, you are going to probably fall behind. And it's
Yeah.
okay to like change that and believe something new.
Well, to go off of what you said about credibility too, I do see that a lot where people are like, well, then I don't know what I'm doing if I actually learned something new and now I'm like, wait, disregard that. But it's like, I think a perfect like opportunity that people can do with that is just taking people along in their content and being honest about where they're at.
Yeah.
I've noticed people that do that, they have the most engaged audience, they have more conversions than ever before because at the end of the day, people are people and it's okay if you don't want to pretend like you have it all together. Like someone
And we
that
know you don't.
I'm like, no one does. It's fine.
Yeah.
Obviously, we all know that, but I think we
Yeah.
forget on social media. Like, we're in this matrix of social media, and we're like, this person is just doing so well, whatever. But like, someone that comes to mind that I feel like does really well with this is Coming Up Roses. I feel like
Yeah.
Kelsey is so honest with her audience, and like if people don't know who that is, she just helps people with launches. Like she is a what would I call her? Like she's
I think she's a
brilliant, but she helps service
coach.
providers. Yeah, like
Yeah.
she just helps all creatives with launching their business and their content and stuff like that. But yeah, she definitely does really well with that, where she's like, okay, like I'm obviously like I help people with their launches, but I've had flops. Like,
Yeah.
okay, I used to, or even you, Jaiden, like how I love the content you've been posting lately, where you're like, okay, I used to like post this type of content, and I actually
Yeah.
disagree with it now. Like,
Yeah,
like I love how
totally.
you just take people along with you.
So I did see a post where someone was like, don't be too honest because you'll lose credibility with your audience. And I think that could be true to a degree of some sort. But the clients that I want to work with, I want them to see me as not a god, but a human. I want them to know that, like, I'm pouring my heart and soul into their business. I want the very best for them. And that's going to require some learning and shifting and evolving. And I know that they want to work with me because of that. Like they want to work with me because they trust that I am going to test it on my own account first. They they want to work with me because they know that I'm going to do things that I just intuitively am like, I think this is what's going to work,
Yeah,
They
you
don't want to work
embody
with
it.
me. Yeah, like I don't know everything. And if anyone like claims that they do, that's psychotic. Like there's just no way. You
You're
don't
like,
know. You
you need
don't
help.
know. Not on social media. Like you could know everything there is to know about engineering, but you can't know everything there is to know about social media because it is too social
Too complex.
algorithms, humans, very confusing. It's not a math equation. So that is why you can't just claim to know everything about it.
Yeah.
I have just like two more things before we wrap up. The second to last one is, how do you manage being consistent with your content and also being a mom and also being a business owner, because you're creating content for more than just yourself. So how are you able to keep up with all of that?
It's ever changing with how I manage all of that. I just talked to you about this the other week too. I'm
Yep.
like, I'm not okay. No, I'm just kidding. No, I
I
think
love it.
that when you have ambitions like me, I was telling one of my other friends that has a baby the same age as me, I was like, I wish I had no ambitions. Like, I wish I just could be a stay at home wife, a stay at home
That's
mom.
so
Like, this is just
real.
my life. But I'm very type A. So I think I find ways to integrate that into my everyday life. Like, I can't do this all alone, actually, guys. I can't.
It turns out.
It turns out, because people do ask me that all the time, and I'm like, wait, no, I don't recommend this. Not to like, I'm sure people are like, wait, what is the secret? There's none. It's just like a
Yeah.
lot of going with the flow, which is really hard for me. So yeah, you definitely can't do it alone. So like I have like a babysitter come, or I do things on the weekend sometimes, or I mean, creating content's really hard to do in the evenings, but sometimes when I put my baby down for the night, like that's when I can actually think. And so I'll do more focused work then sometimes, but I think a lot of it does have to do with like scheduling and planning ahead. Like I can't just like do things on the fly anymore. I used to be like that prior to having a child. It does not work when you
Yeah.
have a child.
Because you'll just
So
never get
yeah,
to it. Because how
you'll
could
never get
you?
to it, and then it also just it doesn't look good on me as a business owner that's providing services for other business owners. Like they need someone they can rely on, and so it's really important that I find a system that can be reliable. I mean, like life happens
Yeah.
sometimes, and that's fine. Like people totally get
Totally.
that, but yeah, I have come to the conclusion, guys, that you can't do it on your own.
Oh,
So
shit.
I ask for help, and then I plan ahead. And then sometimes like during busy season right now, I just do it. Like I will work when he's sleeping or I'll work on the weekends, whatever. I mean, I work regardless. I think I'm addicted to work. So I'm like, I
Relatable.
can't. People are like, what are your hobbies? I'm like, drinking
Oh.
coffee. But yeah, so just like planning ahead and asking for help, that's kind of how I'm able to manage things. And I also feel like at some point, I'll probably want to hire like other photographers to help me. It's just hard
Yeah.
because you're like, I get the business owner side of things where you're like, I need things to be a very certain way. But obviously, everyone just needs to get over it, and that's what I'll have to do. But yeah, I think that as I get through motherhood, that's probably what I'll do too.
And then my last question, they kind of tie together a little bit, but is what is one piece of advice you wish you could give like your younger self? It could be about your business or just in general.
Yeah. One thing that I have thought about a lot is that when the first like 3 years of business, I didn't really care to like connect with other people in my industry. Not because I'm such a people person, but
Yeah.
I just kind of was like put my head down and like do my own thing. I also felt like too, I just had anxiety around other people, kind of like doing what I do or whatever. Like I guess like
Yeah.
I had that fear, which that's just a limiting fear, and like that does happen, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
Like no one can be you. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I had that mindset, and I feel like I would probably tell myself to like just be more involved in my industry, in my local community, just even engaging with other like brands I would want to work with. Like I feel like all of the clients that I have today, most of them, like the bigger clients I work with are from engaging with them, like forming connections. People always ask me like how I land bigger clients, and I'm like I literally just talk to them. Like
Yeah.
and I it's not like I'm outreaching and I'm like here's my services. Sometimes I do that, but most of the time I literally am just engaging like on LinkedIn or I meet someone in person or whatever. So yeah, I would say that's like the main thing I wish that I did more of because I feel like I definitely would be quote unquote farther along if I did make that priority. Um, and then obviously there's the obvious stuff like having more confidence because as you know, imposter syndrome can be hard. And I feel like for
Yes.
the longest time I'm like, I'm not qualified to do any of this. So I always just stuck with the same services and I never like dreamt bigger because I was like, who am I to do that? I feel like a lot of people have that problem, but just somehow finding I wish that I had that confidence to have done that earlier on.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. Like I feel like the community aspect of things like should be everyone's first priority, but it is kind of scary, especially at first. Like I mean, you will get ignored. Not everyone is nice. Not everyone wants to be your friend, you know? So I do think there's a little bit of risk involved and it can make you feel bad. Like if you already have imposter syndrome and then you're trying to build these connections with this community and people do ghost you and don't care about you and want you to go away, like it can hurt really bad, but it's not a reflection on you. And those people, like when you get bigger, they're gonna all of a sudden want to talk to you, which is just kind of funny how that
that's kind of
goes.
how it works.
Yeah, it's just kind of funny how that goes. And then at that point, you can just give them grace and say, yeah, remember when I said
I'm like,
to be,
wait, this is a perfect
remember?
opportunity to be like, remember
Yeah.
when?
But it's just
No.
true. And I mean, I, yes, I get clients from Instagram all the time, but some of my favorite clients are people that like I've been referred to through other favorite clients. Like my best clients are my best referrals because they get me, they know the type of people that I want to work with, they send them to me and I have that connection with them already. So that's where that community comes in as well. Is it's just like if you
Yeah, just
can
doing a
show
good
up for
job.
people, then you know, they'll show up for you, the right people. So I love
Yeah.
that.
I feel like too a lot of people are like word of mouth, you shouldn't rely on that. Which I like you shouldn't that shouldn't be your whole growth
Yeah.
strategy, obviously, but I'm like, people underestimate it. Like it's still so helpful for anyone in any industry.
I mean, I think like at the beginning of most people's businesses and careers, like that's where you start. You start with
Right.
like your friends and family. And that's why I'm one of those people who's like, you don't need to make a new account for your business. You can take your personal account and make it your business account. That's totally fine
Yeah.
because those are probably going to be your first clients anyways, because you
Yeah.
already have some sort of like trust and connection with them. So that's probably going to be your first client. They're going to refer you outside of their circles. And that's really when you can start to build a community, like an Instagram account community or a TikTok account community or something like that. It's kind of after you already have a client or two. I think it's hard to
Yeah.
just start from zero and start posting and just expect that someone will find you. Like it's totally possible, but I do think that is a little bit of a harder way to go about it, in my opinion.
Well, it's like you don't have as much control. Like you're kind of just like putting things out, and like you can have this a solid strategy, but you're still like it's still like the ball's in their court, kind of.
Yeah,
And I feel
totally.
like when the times that I have put myself out there, whether it's cold outreach or just literally forming connection, it's always been a situation where they're like, "Oh my gosh, like I didn't even think you would offer something like this or whatever." And I'm like, "Yeah, like I do."
Yeah.
Yeah, I think definitely community is important. And even like I love what other people do in our community or even what you do where it's like you even if it's just to be about the local community, just having like little events and stuff. Not like anyone has to do that, but I
Yeah.
think that that's really helpful even for e-commerce brands or whatever to implement maybe every once in a while. But I don't know, people just they
Yeah.
underestimate the traditional way of connecting with people.
It's so powerful. That's why it's been around for so long. I love that so much. I feel like this conversation's been so good. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. And if you guys want to find Maddie, we'll have all of her like social things linked, but she's great. She does brand photography, content creation, content strategy, and she's awesome. So
Yeah,
there you
thank
go.
you for having me on, Jaden. I
Yeah, you're
appreciate
welcome.
it.
Yeah. Okay. Bye. First, I want to say thank you so much for being here and listening to my podcast. It means the world to me, and I just appreciate this community more than you could ever know. If you love this episode or a previous episode that you've listened to, go ahead and head to the leave a review link in the show notes and leave us a review. We would really appreciate it. And we're so glad that you're here. Thank you.